Now, in light of recent events, some may say that Kendrick Lamar is the best rapper of our generation. Probably. You can decide. Usually we go between Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, and most prefer Kendrick, and this album, overrated or not, is his best work. Although I know everyone has formed their opinion on this album years ago, there's always another generation to experience and discover this music. So today we'll be reviewing his 2015 album, To Pimp a Butterfly, track by track of course. So the album starts off on a really strong note with a sample from Mr. Boris's Every Nigger is a Star, which we can argue about. But more importantly, the album discusses many different topics such as wealth, capitalism, identity, fame, and much more. However, it doesn't come off as fake woke or preachy when topics like these are usually discussed. And I think that's because of the sound itself. He's rapping over this really groovy, jazz-infused funk instrumental. I mean, Kendrick really sets himself apart from his contemporaries, so if you had different expectations going into this album, I could understand why you would be taken back a bit, but what he does here is nothing short of incredible.
You off. What the fuck is really going on? This dick ain't free.
Now, interludes can completely shut down the momentum of an album, but that isn't the case here. I remember specifically downloading this track the first time that I heard it, and I'd probably listen 5 times a day, and every single time I'd listen, I would laugh. It's a hilarious track. I have no issues with interludes as long as they progress the album forward, which most interludes don't. 4-Free starts off with a really distinct saxophone riff, and then we immediately jump headfirst into a rapid conversation. We start hitting notes of race, inequality, poverty, police brutality, sex, but it's the delivery that gets me. It's perfect. And even if it's a bit too fast-paced for you to get everything on your first listen, the main takeaway is that his dick isn't free.
Got the whole world talking King Kunta. Everybody wanna cut the legs off him. When you got the yams.
King Kunta, to put simply, it's about legacy. He mentions a lot of big names, Richard Pryor, Michael Jackson, and their impacts. Even though they were a minority in America, no amount of marginalization could have stopped them from becoming what they became, which were icons. He talks about the effects on culture and perception, with him being the one on top, as the song literally sounds like a marching anthem, a declaration of power.
To admit it, institutionalized. I keep running back for a visit. Hold up. Get it back.
On Institutionalized, Kendrick discusses how systematic racism has affected Black Americans and the current struggle. It's a very introspective track. He talks about his upbringing in Compton, his struggle with fame, and the influence of gang culture on young men. And on each verse, we get different perspectives. The storytelling is done excellently. Also, a round of applause for Snoop. I don't think anyone could have delivered what he did on this track. I think it was specifically made for him. I was conflicted, misusing my influence. You'll hear that a lot, and I'll discuss it going forward. I had to listen, I don't know, probably 10 times before I realized he was talking about a vagina. I was slow, still slow. And when you do realize, everything sort of makes sense. It's tasteful dirty talk, but it isn't only about that. It's about relationships, emotional turmoil, love, lust, you know. I mean, it's done really well. You could probably play this song while driving with your mom, and unless she's actively listening, you should be fine.
Confidence in yourself, breaking on marble floors, watching anonymous strangers telling me that I'm yours.
You is a fight with oneself. It's a fight about self-doubt, self-acceptance, self-love. It's a guilt trip. It's mental health problem. It's a lot. And the delivery on the second verse is immaculate. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks from this album. After listening to it, you just want to sit back and look at your life. Yeah, it's an amazing fucking track.
But if God got us, then we gon' be alright. Nigga, we gon' be alright.
All Right was one of the first few tracks to gain traction when this album dropped. His delivery was engaging and energetic, and I think that is what really gravitated persons initially. Paired with the production and a really simple hook that sounds like an affirmation, I think it would be hard to ignore. But after you get hooked in, Kendrick just starts unloading with his thoughts on the black struggle, oppression, poverty, and much more. And also with Pharrell, you're destined for greatness. Kendrick really has everything here. He has the word wordplay, the imagery, the metaphors, the symbolism. He's an English teacher's best student.
Drinking that potion, you can see me swerving as I want you.
For Sale Interlude is less of a song and more of an experience. It's a ride, it's a journey, it's thought-provoking. It feels like you're being teleported to a different dimension or being elevated to a higher plane. It's a well-done interlude. I was confused, misusing my influence.
Fraction while writing Blue Magic. Thank God for rap. I would say it got me a pack, but what's better?
On Momma, we have another jazzy track where Kendrick talks about the lessons that he's learned from his mom while reflecting on his life. He explores his identity, every nook and cranny, and leaves everything out. It's a fundamental track to this album. It might be bittersweet, but it's a necessary exploration.
14 years later, going hard like we used to on the dead homies.
The opening of this track is great. I'm not sure if it's a sample, but it's incredible. Anyway, we have a very frustrated and confrontational Lamar on this song. He's upset for all the right reasons as he talks about street culture, violence, police brutality, and priorities. He challenges himself and others to be accountable for their actions and the roles that they play in their community. It's far from throwing blame though, as poverty quite literally breeds poor outcomes for most.
How much a dollar really costs? The question is detrimental, paralyzing my thoughts, parasites in my...
How Much a Dollar Cost is one of the best examples of Kendrick Lamar's storytelling capabilities. To summarize the story, he talks about an encounter with a homeless person. This person then challenges him on his empathy, self-awareness, compassion, and human connection. In the end, this homeless person turns out to be God, and we're then confronted to question our moral obligation to each other. I think this was Kendrick at his very, very best.
I don't give a fuck about your complexion, I know what the Germans done. Sneak.
Complexion is an acceptance of all, a love letter to all different skin tones, and a unity to one's ethnicity. It's a celebration of diversity and the beauty of blackness in all forms. Colorism is something that we still face on a daily basis. I have dark-skinned friends who only date other light-skinned individuals because they want to have light-skinned babies. It makes no sense in my opinion. It stems from self-hate, parents who never showed their kids how to love and accept themselves, and racism, etc, etc. It's a dumb and stupid thing to divide us all. I'm pretty sure everyone that's watching this could identify a situation or some scenario in which they saw something like this played out, and you should definitely call it out. It's hateful, it's insensitive, and it's bigoted. This song continues on similar themes of race, but this time on a heavier focus on racism, biases, and preconceptions. You can tell based on his tone that he's really upset, and then the hook really hammers it home. The feature contribution here is really the highlight for me, no shade to Kendrick whatsoever. It's really aggressive and dominant, definitely another standout track for me.
Dog, we live in the Laugh Factory every time they mention your name.
You Ain't Gotta Lie is a pretty straightforward track. He pushes for one to be authentic with themselves, not having to put on this mask to fit into societal norms. In other words, just don't be Drake. Asks you to ask yourself, why do you need to do this? Is it worth it? Are you okay with what you're doing? Good message aside, it's a very jazzy-esque track that I like. I'm so glad that this sounds live, because if it was done any other way, I don't think it would hit as hard. It's a very positive centered track as it focuses on self-discovery, reflection, and motivation. The build up to the hook, the flow, the instrumental, they're all just running a train on my ear. Consensually, of course. And then it breaks out into spoken word. It's It's damn good.
When shit hit the fan, this you still a fan. The ghost of Mandela, hold my flow, stay prepared.
No, I appreciate Mortal Man for what it is. I appreciate the dialogue that it's trying to have and the thought-provoking aspect of it. Even the conversation between him and Jada Pinkett Smith's husband was cool. No joke, I really appreciate it. But 12 minutes is a lot to ask. He even finishes up everything really nicely with completing the line of, I was conflicted misusing my influence. He wraps that up pretty nicely here, but 12 minutes is a fucking lot. Like, it was cool the first couple listens of this album, but I tend to skip this track when I'm ever going back to it. But objectively speaking, it does what it's intended to do. So that was Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, and it's everything you'd expect. It's a solid 10. This album will remain as a testament of the greatness that hip-hop has to offer. The album grows with you and you appreciate it with each and every listen. The music itself is fantastic, from the jazzy instrumentals to the beats and samples, even the general themes of the album and the overall cohesiveness of it. It's perfect. But yeah, those were my thoughts on the album. You can let me know yours, whether you agree, disagree, any fun facts at all. You can always let me know in the comments. Links to the album will be in the description. If you haven't listened to this album, highly recommend that you do. Even if you have done already, probably go listen to it again. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. Bye.